All right. We are back. These are not the faces you were expecting, but today it is a takeover. It's myself, Jayson Brown, here with new member of Climbing the Pocket, Jonathan, here to make us a bit smarter on today's show. As always, we got Dave in the truck, also on the screen, hanging out with us today. And in today's show, we're going to do a bit of a recap. We're going to look over the things that didn't go the way we would have loved in the last game. We're gonna look ahead a little bit into the upcoming game, and we got some questions from the audience that we're gonna jump into as well. Maybe talk a little bit about who's to blame, all of those wonderful things. Do a bit of score prediction, and then we're gonna get up out of here. But while we're doing all of it, we'll be sipping on some beverages, having a good time, and yeah, Dave, roll us in. Let's go.
Welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings. He's here on Mondays.
All right. Here we go. We're live. Vikings Happy Hour. I know you showed up looking for Matt and Ryan and the crew. They've had some personal things going on, so you're stuck with me and Jonathan and Dave. Before we really jump into this, though, as it's my first show with Jonathan. He's one of the newer members of the CTP crew. Jonathan, introduce yourself to the folks. Tell us how you doing, how you been, what's going on with you.
My name is Jonathan. I'm a student at the University of Minnesota, studying data science as my major. It's super interesting stuff, you know. I've been a Vikings fan basically my whole life, but more recently I've taken a more informed look at my fandom, you know, trying to really analyze the team. And it's led me to this community. So here I am. You're
Love it.
welcome.
And this informed look at Vikings fandom, like how can it both be informed and like have you still stick around and be a fan is really what I want to understand.
Well, unfortunately, sometimes you're stuck with the team you're born with.
This is true. This is true. Well, before we really jump into things here, just want to go ahead and give a shout out to some of the folks. We got Mary in the building, Clifford in the building, Joseph. What's up, my man? Sorry we missed you last. Sorry we missed you on Tuesday. Good to see you today. Vikings Jerome, as always. Luis, Mateo. Let's get into it. Let's talk a bit of Vikings. And so,
And there's Wayne.
we got Jonathan here. He's a very smart man. You already heard me rant after the game about how I was feeling about things. So we're gonna mix it up a little bit. We're gonna get Jonathan here to give us his thoughts. First and foremost, let's just jump in to the last game. What were your thoughts coming out of that? We've had a bit of time. Some of the emotions maybe have died down a little bit. Um, yeah, what were the main things you were thinking about kind of coming out of that game? And how do you feel about this team and their chances, I guess, coming out of the game going forward?
So that game was really disappointing for me because it's just, I guess, I had kind of the offense had really struggled against Pittsburgh. Well, against Pittsburgh it was good, right? But Kirk Cousins struggled. But then against Chicago it was just terrible. So I really talked myself into that just being they weren't ready. Just couldn't really motivate themselves, whatever. But like against the Rams, they're really gonna get up and play. But the offense was not good against the Rams. That was why we lost. Cousins was okay. He could have been better. The major
It's an
issue is an inefficient
understatement.
run game. Inefficient run game. Clint Kubiak, I don't know. He kept calling runs that just went nowhere. So I honestly thought the defense played really well. Turning over Stafford 3 times, like you're supposed to win games when you turn over the opposing QB 3 times, but it didn't happen for us. Offense didn't move the ball well enough. I think there were a few fourth downs in the game. The one especially where we had a 4th and 1. Now it was closer to our own end zone. It was really on our side of the field, but we really should have gone for it. If we could have converted that, it would have been huge for us. We ended up punting. They got a 67-yard punt return touchdown, and then it felt like the game was over after that. And those are really the areas that I think cost us. So yeah, what about you, Jason? What do you think from that game?
Oh, I mean, I think that you nailed the analysis in that, uh, yeah, the offense didn't do enough. And I know that oftentimes when you say the offense didn't do enough, what people tend to hear is that it's all Kirk Cousins' fault and you're blaming it all on him if you say the offense didn't play well enough. But you mentioned like Kirk, yeah, he played, maybe kind of okay. And Mateo in the comments, he just kind of
Generous.
posted something that a lot of people have been saying for a little bit here that after what appeared to be a very hot start to the season, there was a point in time where Kirk was the number one quarterback on PFF. Kirk seems to have fallen off a bit lately, and I know that I want to say like you're like a Kirk stan, but you tend to be a little bit more level-headed in your analysis, is what I'll say. Um,
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on Kirk in this game and maybe Kirk over the last few games where things don't seem to be clicking the way that they were maybe a little bit earlier in the season.
So first of all, it's really funny. For a couple weeks, Cousins was like the number one graded like offensive grade QB, and then his offensive grade dipped to second, but his passing grade was number one. So what Kirk fans would do is they'd specifically post whichever one was like higher for him in that given week, and that was I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny, but yeah, he's been worse. There's no doubt about that. Last game, it's really hard for me to separate between like the play calling and like what is Cousins just choosing bad throws, not being aggressive, and then what is like the play calling just not putting him in a position where he can really play his best. It's really hard for me to separate those things, and that's where I struggle. I think he's been okay, but he's definitely been worse, and he's definitely not been worth the contract like he was earlier in the year. So That's what I think.
Oh, all right. And I know this is getting way ahead here. I like Quang's comment. Maybe we can, we can take some money from Kirk every time he throws a check down short of the sticks
That'll
on
work.
third down. But it's getting ahead of us. We have some people, looking ahead, and I mean, we'll talk about it in greater detail later on. But hire an offensive mind, trade Kirk, keep Kirk. I know we're going to talk about it, but do we feel like Clint Kubiak has maybe lost the magic? He started off the season, I think, in Eric's numbers, he was top five for a while, dropped to middle of the pack, and then we really haven't heard much. He hasn't got back above middle of the pack. He's been, kind of in that right lower third for the top of the lower third, but still lower third for a majority of the season. So, as you're looking at things, I know that you say it's maybe tough to separate the two, but do you feel like a lot of what's going on with us now is just folks catching up to what Clint Kubiak is trying to do and us not being able to adjust as quickly?
That could be part of it. Part of it is also I think the Vikings they're too segmented in their approach. Instead of entering each game trying to do whatever is needed to win the game, it feels like they enter with more individual goals like avoid turnovers or avoid sacks or avoid negative plays or get some yards after catch or get Jefferson involved. And all those things are great, and ideally we they'd all happen every week, right? But if you're trying to optimize for those types of goals over winning, over scoring as much points as possible, you're not doing your job. And I think that's a trap that Clint Kubiak has fallen into.
Oh, that's a great point, because a lot of what it seems we've adjusted for over the course of the season, it's okay. Kirk's not great in the pocket, so we're going to get the ball out really fast. But oh wait, Kirk's a great deep ball thrower. Are we going to take those chances? Are we going to roll him out? Okay, maybe not. We're not going to want to do that. Or like maybe if Kirk's too aggressive, we might get some more interceptions. And so like it seems that there's been this back and forth throughout the year where we're not really sure what to optimize for, and it seems as though we're optimizing for Kirk's TD to interception ratio. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe passer rating sometimes is what it feels like, because those checkdowns on third down, I mean, they still look great if you're looking at passer rating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I I don't buy into the narratives that Cousins tries to like optimize his play for stats so much. I think he's just naturally a very cautious quarterback, and that just naturally plays well for passer rating. I just think we need to be more flexible. I Cousins is capable of doing quite a few things like shotgun passing or play action. We just need to not have an identity. Like whenever you have an identity, then your opponents can just work to stop your identity, and I think that's an issue with us.
What would you like to see that identity be? Just being a multiple kind of Bill Belichick type of team where whatever we need to do to beat you, that's what we're going to do, versus like we need to run the ball
Exactly.
more, which is
Exactly. Yeah.
awesome.
I
I love that.
I think we need to. Yeah.
Yeah, but that we're
Yeah, I
going to
love.
run more is a defensive mechanism. When his quarterback isn't having a
Mhm.
good day, he wants to take it out of his hands. And on the play calling, there's a lot of them where we see Kirk check down and we see wide receivers wide open beyond the sticks, and it's his
Mhm.
choice. It's his cautious nature. And there's the whole, well, they were in too high BS, which blows my mind that he's so afraid of that. But he gets scared, and if he gets hit early or things don't go right early, it gets stuck in his head, and then it compounds. He doesn't have the prerequisite forget the last play and move on if he had a bad play, and that's been Kirk Cousins his whole career.
I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, that's fair. And so, uh, I guess yeah, we'll spin it forward. We understand Kirk didn't play as well as we'd like. The offense stalled out. Yes, of course. I mean, the offensive line, there's going to be problems with the protection at the time. You're playing Aaron Donald, so we understand that's also a factor. So before anyone starts yelling at me, we understand offensive line could always be better than it was. Adam Thielen being hobbled is an issue for this team, because it just allows teams to put even more attention on Justin Jefferson. KJ Osborne's a nice player. He's not Adam Thielen. doesn't scare defenses in the same way, lets them do some different things. But I think that we've lived through the disappointment of that last game over the past couple days. We got Jonathan here. We're going to look ahead. And even though Packers fans will say we already won the Super Bowl earlier this season, we get a chance to win the Super Bowl twice, maybe 3 times in the same season. So we got a matchup coming up. It's one that we, every time the Packers are on the schedule, Vikings fans, Vikings players get a little bit more up, a little more hype for this matchup. So Jonathan, as you're looking ahead to this matchup with the Packers, I won't ask how you're feeling. How do you feel like we match up with the Packers?
So it was recently announced Thielen he won't play this game. He's done for the season. That doesn't make me feel like we match up very well. Jared Alexander back for the Packers. That doesn't make me feel like we match up very well. Although maybe Jared's a little rusty, coming off the injury and everything. Maybe the saving grace for Minnesota is this game is going to be cold, very cold. Maybe one of the coldest games in NFL history, and maybe that slows down the Packers' passing offense because our secondary is not going to slow down their passing offense. So maybe our running game can do something. Like last year, it was very windy, and we won a game where we were not the better team. If that game was in a dome, I don't think we get within 7 points last year in that game. But it was very windy. They couldn't pass the ball. Dalvin Cook had a big day, and we ended up winning. So maybe something like that can happen again. We are very outmatched. I don't like our odds. Our red zone offense, I'd like to see some like splits, but our red zone offense without Thielen, we cannot score touchdowns. So how do you win without scoring touchdowns against Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams?
You run the ball and you hope
obviously,
the wind blows 50 miles an hour.
Luis just gave us the game plan. It's CJ Ham will get 10+ touches, and we are golden with that going in. And yes, more so than just beating the Packers, Aaron Nagler and the Packers media collectively losing their mind after that last game did make it all that much more enjoyable. So, fingers crossed we can see some of those things again. But Jonathan, there's something else you mentioned there that I wanted to get your take on, because I know that we've talked about it on the timeline at some points, on Twitter, in the group chat at different points. But you mentioned that Dalvin Cook was kind of able to carry the Vikings to victory in past matchups against the Packers. But you've also said at different times that Dalvin doesn't look like the same Dalvin anymore, even before the injury that kind of took him out of some games. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm curious for your thoughts, because we got good news, bad news today. Good news, hey, Dalvin's back, he gets to play. Bad news, Thielen's gone. Curious for your perspective on how much of an impact you expect Dalvin being there to have on the outcome of this game, as kind of maybe a countermeasure to us losing Thielen.
So my hot take that I don't think is that hot, but I think a lot of other people might think is hot, is that us getting Dalvin Cook helps us less than the Packers getting Jared Alexander back. So basically, in terms of net people getting off of injury, this is a negative for us, right? With them getting Alexander and us getting Cook. That would be my hot take. I think it'll help. I think maybe Cook can do something. I don't think if Cook plays against the Rams, I don't think our running game is much more efficient. There just weren't holes to run in. Madison isn't great, but he's not terrible either. And I don't think Cook could have really changed the outcome of that game. So,
all right, David. I know that the run game. As a former offensive lineman, that's near and dear to your heart. As we start to think about this one, because if we're just calling it what it is, the Vikings have got their asses kicked in the trenches last couple of games, and the Rams were beaten, we're whipping them
Especially on
on
the
both sides
inside.
of the trenches. And the defensive line, we were expecting it, but their offensive line with whatever level of backup play they were on, also whipping our ass, I don't think was something that really most of us were going to call. So as you're thinking about this game in the trenches, how do you see this one going after what you've seen from the Vikings over these past couple weeks?
It's going to be much more of the same. They'll do a little bit better, but not much. This is going to be a trench-driven game because it is so cold. Um, it's going to be nasty out there, and nobody's going to like throwing the football because the football is going to hurt, and so they're gonna run a lot more, and it's going to be. It looks like Udo will be back hopefully from COVID, so he'll be out there at right guard. So you got the beef. You'll have the four tackles and the one center, um, and they're that's how they're built. And you're hoping that they're geared up for the run game, and that can help. And we'll probably see a more run heavy game. The Vikings have been throwing the ball 60% of the time during the season. They are, on that golden, 60-40 type deal. But I expected to see more running this game, and weather will do that. And if we can get away with it, we're going to get away with it. It's a way to take the ball out of Kirk's hands. It's that simple because literally the weather is not going to be conducive to throwing the football, throwing or catching. So run it. Use
All
Dalvin
right.
Cook. Use the
So
piss out of him. Run his legs off.
so we're expecting a low scoring game. Is that what you're calling, Dave?
Basically, it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be in the 30s. No,
Okay.
you're looking.
All right. All right. Well, before we get into the lightning round, I want to get to a couple questions from the audience. We had some folks drop some questions in there for us ahead of time, and so Jonathan, I hope you're ready. But first question from Clifford: will retooling the defense put us back in contention? If so, who should be the QB next year?
Um, if Cousins is the QB, if we like magically could just like clap our hands, whatever, and we have a top five defense, yeah, we'd be a contending team. With especially if we could get like a new offensive head coach, like if somehow we could get an offensive minded head coach and a top five defense, well, I mean, now you just that's beautiful, right? But that's not realistic. So I don't think the defense can be retooled like that. So I don't think it's worth trying to compete next year. I don't think going for the playoffs, I don't think going for a Super Bowl makes any sense next year. So I think the QB next year, it should either be some kind of a bridge QB that we can find that maybe, we want to take a flyer on and we can have him battle in training camp with Kellen Mond, or it could be a rookie QB that we draft either with our draft pick or maybe we could get a first round draft pick from trading Kirk Cousins. So.
And then the second part of Clifford's question: um, do you think the Vikings are saying anything about Kellen Mond by bringing back preseason GOAT Kyle Sloter?
So is Slaughter actually above Mond on the depth chart? Because if Mond is below Slaughter on the depth chart, that does say something, I think. But otherwise, no, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just depth, right?
All right. Next question from Jake. So let me see here. Who are some of your favorite head coaching candidates? So he has Eric Bieniemy as number one, and he also mentions Kellen Moore as being more of a boom bust sort of candidate for head coach, just being thrown around a lot. But interested in your thoughts. Who are some names that maybe you'd be interested in as a potential head coaching candidate if Zimmer does get replaced, as it seems as though things are trending?
Moore excites me. Moore is an interesting candidate, but he's very inexperienced, very young, right? And there's like a danger there. Like you said, boomer bust. Bienemy, I'm I'm not sold on his. It's part of me, I guess, is just worried about hiring a coach who is a running back because I'm always worried about run pass balance. Maybe that's just like being biased here, but I'm not sold that Bienemy as our head coach would really bring in like an offensive dynasty like people think with hiring a Chiefs assistant. Another head coach candidate that I think is sort of underrated actually because he just never gets considered. But who's done a pretty good job this year with Mac Jones is Josh McDaniels with the Patriots. I'd like to bring him in for an interview. I don't know if he's the guy, but I'd like to give him a chance, get him in the room.
Love that. And Luis, what is he saying? We riot. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to
He
that.
asked,
We'll
will
get
we
to that.
riot if they keep all three and
Eh?
bring it all back? And the answer to that's
I
yes.
mean,
I hope
probably.
so.
I mean, we'll pretend to riot in the off season, but we will be right back in it come preseason. The first highlight they show us of training camp, we'll be right back in there all the way, believing that this is our year. We're definitely winning the Super Bowl. Look at Justin Jefferson dust that guy who's going to be selling cars next year. Of course, we're going to be unstoppable. So yeah, I mean, we can talk our shit in the off season, but we know how it's going to go once they start throwing things around. But all right, we're going to get into this lightning round. And Luis, perfect segue. Thank you very much. Because the next thing we're going to talk about here is the case for and against keeping each member of the Big Three, and that Big Three being Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman. And so, Jonathan, I would like you to give your take. Kirk Cousins, should he be retained?
If we could somehow, like in a magical world, where Cousins, his kids love Minnesota. He loves Minnesota. He loves the cold weather, everything. He decides, you know what? I'm going to sign a 6-year, $150 million long term extension, like on a budget. Going to give you guys way below market value. Yes, keep him. But if he's going to be like, the only thing I'm signing is some 2-year, $80 million extension or something, we have to trade him. We're not at the point where we can compete with Cousins. He's too expensive, and we have too much dead money elsewhere on our roster to have an expensive contract like his. And like some of the points that people here have brought up, he does fail sometimes in more important moments, which you can't have that from a guy who costs as much as he does. So I think we could trade him and maybe try and get some draft capital.
All right. I like that. David, anything to add?
I'd trade him tomorrow if I had the chance. Um, but I'm not a Kirk Cousins advocate. Never have been. Um, it makes sense to me that whoever's in charge, come time that we get close to the draft in March, that they start selling the heck out of Kirk Cousins, and he gets traded. We want to. He's going to get $10 million from us no matter what. I would like to shuffle off that $35 million to somewhere else and let him go. And most likely we'd get a first rounder for him. That seems to be at least the minimum going price. And there will be QB needy teams. There always is. Every year they start out, wow, there's only maybe 2 or 3 teams that needs quarterbacks. And by the end of the year, it's like half the teams need quarterbacks. There's teams that will be willing to take him, thinking, a head coach with ego, I can fix him. By all means, go. But it all depends on who's in here, who's in charge by then.
And to answer Clifford's question, devil's advocate, if he's not good enough for us, what makes us think he's good enough for another team that considers themselves to be a contender? Probably the same thing that made us make that decision, and that Kirk is a good quarterback. And if you look at him in aggregate, he looks like the type of person that if you put him in the right environment, he can help you win games. So like Seattle, not that environment. So much of what was going on in Seattle was just unsustainable because Russ was running around and doing all those things behind that awful line and still like keeping them in contention year over year. Kirk would go there and they would fail even worse than they have this season because like that's not an environment that he can succeed in. But like if you can get him in a team where they do have a few more of those things together, I know like teams like Denver are thrown out a lot. Pittsburgh, I don't know like how good or bad their line is, but it would need to be a team that really has all of the things on offense. So like a team like Denver that does have weapons that are there already, and their weapons are cheap still at the moment. So they potentially could invest some money to maybe beef up a line around Kirk Cousins. Like teams like that, where he could potentially go in and have some good things around him, maybe for a season or two, make a lot of sense. And like, I could see NFL people convincing themselves that, like, hey, we could make this work. We're in a window. Let's take a big swing, see what goes. But I mean,
And he
yeah,
does have
we've
good
seen,
stats.
yeah,
If
we've
you
seen
look
how
at
it
his
goes.
stats
Yeah, the
every year,
Browns.
everybody's, wow, look at all those touchdowns. Look at all those yards.
Yeah, and for a team like the Browns, I mean, the problem with the Browns is that who's he throwing to, right? Like they have a great line, but their receiving weapons, which for a quarterback's play are far more important, are quite suspect.
Yeah,
Like,
I like
so I mean,
Donovan People-Jones.
it's true. He's very boom bust though, but that could just be me being tainted by fantasy football. So don't take that analysis too much to heart. If Russell Wilson is available, I mean, yes, please. But I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. We didn't make the list of places that he wanted to go, so I mean, I don't know. But if we could get him, I mean, sure, it's Russell Wilson.
Hey, I'd love
Gladly.
Deshaun Watson if he clears his legal hurdles.
Oh God, we're not going to get into all that because yeah. Anyway, so very non-smooth segue to jump back into the show. Mike Zimmer, what's your take, Jonathan? Should he be retained or should he be thrown out of the boat?
He has to go. He's failed too much defensively these past few years with what is pretty substantial defensive investment. And as a defensive head coach, it's inexcusable. The other issue is Zimmer at this point in his career, he does not have a bright future. He is not the kind of guy where you bring in and you think, oh, he's going to develop. He's going to grow as a coach. He's going to really learn. He's going to make us better for a long time. That's not who he is. I think we need to find somebody who is like that, but on the offensive side of the ball.
Okay. All right. Dave, I know there was a long period of time there where you were among the staunchest Mike Zimmer defenders in all
still
of our
make an
group.
argument out of all three. That's the one you need to keep if one keeps.
Okay, well, make that argument. Let me hear it, Dave. Convince me.
Clifford asked what's the percentage of, I think it was Clifford, that Mike's gone. And I'd say that's 95%. It's up to the Wilfs. And it depends on the counsel they get as to whether he stays or he goes and who they determine is the problem with everything this year. The argument for him is that he's had to coach with Kirk Cousins forced on him. He did not want Kirk Cousins. He thought, as Everson Griffin said, Kirk Cousins' ass. They obviously don't get along. They don't think the same mentally. Whereas before, pre-Kirk Cousins, the team was on the rise, right? And then we hit 2016. Then Teddy's knee blew up. Then you had Sam Bradford, and Sam Bradford started out 6-0, and then suddenly the offensive line got the plague. And for the rest of the season, we barely made it. And then you got 2017, and Sam Bradford's knees went to shit, which is going to happen with Anthony Barr too. And then we got, Road Lightning, Road Lightning that year with Case Keenum. And his lucky horseshoe, which drove Zim nuts. But Zim knew he could get the big plays out of Case because he does like the big plays. He does like his conservative pound, mash. And then he likes the long shot. He likes those high production plays. He's not the one that goes 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards. He's, push the ball, run the ball, 5, 6, 7, eat clock, and then boom, right? And then he got Kirk Cousins against his will. And he's tried to make that work. And I think Kirk Cousins came in and said, don't worry about it, coach. I got it. And that's why we didn't see them get together until this year, which blows my freaking mind. If I'm the head coach, I'm going to say, I don't give a shit what you think. You're going to come in here and you're going to learn. We're going to talk about this. But that's me. And I thought Zimmer was more old school like that. Now, Zimmer obviously loves his defense. He still can scheme up a defense like nobody's business. He has forgotten more football than most of us will ever know, but he has not gotten that defense back to where it needs to be. Last year was a joke. This year was a joke because of lack of personnel. This year, we've had injuries. He's got some personnel, but we knew when we signed all those free agents, most of them on the cheap, that only about 50% of them would work out. That turns out to be the case. You have to develop chemistry. You've got to develop early, and you got to go. And some of those early guys, like Kendricks and Barr and even Harrison Smith and stuff, they're starting to get long in the tooth. So that wasn't there. I still think he's a fantastic defensive mind in the league. Hell, he's got a defense named after him. Not many coaches do. That's why I think if any of them stayed, it would be him that I wanted out of the three. Now, do I want him to stay? That's a different question. And the answer to that is no. I want all three of them gone. I want Zim fired. I want Spielman fired or put in a position where he can't do anything, i.e., out of the GM spot, get a new GM, and I want Kirk traded in March. That's how I feel. Zim's got enough warts. He's got enough flaws that, game management and a whole bunch of other shit that it's grown stale here. The whole time in Minnesota is stale as 10-day-old bread. And if you flip it over, you'll see the mold growing on the bottom side. Sorry.
There we go. All right. Well, there's been a lot of things going on in these comments here. A lot of ageism, saying that, Zim is too old to be here doing the job anymore. Not sure if we can get all the way behind that.
Hey,
Producer
the greatest
Dave
coach
still holding
ever
things down
is
for us
what,
here.
70?
He's like 70 years old. So, but there's some other things that were said here that because I have Jonathan on, it's it's a perfect time because a lot of what we're seeing in the comments is people asking for maybe a more dynamic quarterback, one who's a bit more mobile, one who can run around a little bit. And I know that there's been points through this season that you've kind of pointed out that, like, while we can get seduced by like the flashy plays that come with maybe Lamar Jackson or some of the other quarterbacks that like get out of the pocket a lot, that many of the top quarterbacks in the league at this moment, if you're looking at PFF, if you're looking at EPA plus completion percentage over expectation, are still quarterbacks that play the game from the pocket. So, Jonathan, I guess, what are your thoughts? If you're thinking, at this point, you've made the case for Kirk to be gone. We're going to assume that Zim is gone here as well. What's the quarterback position look like? What type of quarterback are you looking to bring in? If it's up to you, you're the GM, you get to make these kind of choices for us as we move forward.
So, I want the kind of quarterback who, first of all, he needs to have an arm that can be capable of making basically any throw. I think the arm is the most important thing on the QB. Nothing else matters nearly as much. Then they need to be a competitor, really want to win. That is the most important thing for them. And I don't know how good we are at finding those types of people. I don't know how important that is for our team, because sometimes you see production in college, you're like, oh, sure, they're for sure they're a winner, right? But for different people, they motivate themselves in different ways, right? But then I think the offensive mentality behind the team is more important even than the QB. Something that happens for us way too often is we'll get a lead, right? And we'll play conservative. We'll play passive. When was the last time we beat a team by 3 or 4 or 5 touchdowns? We never do, right? Because we stop. And I think I want a coach, and I want an offensive coordinator, and I want a QB who wants to just keep scoring. They have a killer instinct. They have a killer mentality. That's what I want.
I agree. Score 50 points a game. Do the Denny Green approach. That I don't care how good the defense is. If they get 1 or 2 stops, we win because we're going to score on every single drive. That's the mentality on offense I want.
Mm-hmm. Jayson, you're muted, by the way.
He is muted.
David, can you put Kwang's comment back up now that you can actually hear what I'm asking you to do? Because
Jonathan,
he disagrees with you. Yeah, he says, Jonathan, you're wrong. So, I mean, obviously, he said it's not the arm, it's the balls. And does that kind of speak to what you're talking about when you're talking about the competitiveness? Is that kind of a...
That is, but my counter argument is if you have huge balls but no arm, You can't make any throws. If you have no balls but a great arm, you can still make some throws, right? So that's my counter argument to
Yeah, but
this statement. So.
if you generally don't, if you have the balls but not the arm, you can generally at least throw mid range. You may not be able to hit the deep ball, but you can throw short and mid range and still keep it going. It's the ability to read a defense, go against its weaknesses, throw to the open areas, to the open receivers, and keep the ball moving. If you're a quarterback and you can only accurately throw 10 yards, that's fine. That's the distance of the sticks. I will, as an offensive coordinator, will put my receivers at that 10 yards, and I will plan to move everybody else out and make you, optimize you to be productive and move the ball downfield. But you've got to have the gonads to do that. It's not that as an offensive coordinator, i.e. Clint Kubiak, where you design plays to have receivers go this way, they go deep past 10, and your quarterback doesn't have the ball, so he throws it 2 yards to C.J. Ham. That's the difference.
CJ Ham, 10-plus target game coming up.
And Kirk has the
Coming
arm.
up.
He's got a beautiful deep arm when he throws it.
And Mary, we love that you love the conversation, and that's really what it's all about for us. Last person here, Rick Spielman. Jonathan, is he staying or is he going?
If I was the one making the decisions, I was the Wilfs. He's gone. What day does our season end? Whatever, like 15
January
minutes
10th.
after the last game. Okay. Yeah. Well, then he's gone January 11th. He's cleaning out his office. The argument for Spielman to stay is he's organized. I think he's a good leader in the front office. I think he builds a good front office team. But the main thing with Spielman is when he orchestrates a plan, like when he has a plan for how he wants the roster to be made, how he wants the team to get built, what he wants to do in the offseason, or even in the draft. When he has that plan, he executes, and he executes well. My issue is I don't think the plan is usually very good. And I don't know who's making the plan, whether that's Zimmer, whether that's him. I don't think the plan has been very good in recent years. So if he could operate in some capacity, working with somebody who really is more of a visionary, who has a better plan, I'd like for him to stay. But otherwise, I'm very out on Spielman.
Mateo's got this right. Since he and Zimmer have been together, and you got to remember, Rick's been here a long time. The only first round successes, real hits, are Barr and JK.
How are we defining hits here?
Pro Bowls, maybe?
Okay.
Who else?
I mean the first rounders haven't been good. They have not been good.
Can you name any other first rounder that falls into that category? We have some second.
I mean, Trey Waynes didn't live up to his draft position, but he was a good football player.
Yeah, but he was never a Pro Bowl level. Trey Waynes was great as long as he didn't have to get his head turned around to stop a ball.
For a top 10 overall pick.
He's a great tackler. It's just his problem was when the receiver started to look back, he didn't look back with him.
Also true. I'll give him 2.5. Trey wasn't terrible. The other ones have been god awful.
2.5 out of how many years? 8?
I mean, too many years. I'm not giving a pass because I think he should stay. I am with Clifford. I do expect that Rick gets to hang around for a bit. And I'm also very surprised that Steve's comment that was just up there, that's the second time I've seen someone in here mention trading Dirty Harrison Smith. And so I guess, that's another kind of strike against Rick, that we have some of these contracts that we're holding on to in through next season with like Thielen, like Harrison Smith. I guess you had Jonathan. What are your thoughts on some of those players who seemed untouchable, who maybe could help another team?
Clifford says, hold on, I want to answer Clifford. Clifford, Dave, that's more on scouting. Who runs the scouting department, Clifford? Who's the head of it?
Plus, Spielman is supposed to be like a scouting guy. That's like his forte.
He's a personnel guy. That's where he came from.
Oh, yeah, and Quang coming through saying, we could have had Aaron Donald. So your Barr pick, he doesn't even want to give you that, Dave.
That's what I'm saying. There are so many we could have had, and we never did. Now, and Spielman's got a whole history of that. If anybody wants to go, well, Spielman's good. He finds those nice fifth and seventh round gems. Almost every GM, if they're halfway decent, finds those fifth and seventh round gems every once in a while. That's a roll of the dice, and that does happen. Yes, he has found some, right? And then he's proceeded to run some of them out of town, i.e., Stephon Diggs. But you can't say that makes a good GM. It doesn't. You've got to take your early rounders and have them produce. And you expect first rounders to be starters. You expect second and third rounders to eventually get on the field and produce and be contributors. Take all our third rounders from this year's draft. And what have you got? A handful of plays. That's it. Kellen Mond hasn't seen the field. Jones, who's now on COVID, went on COVID as of today, has only seen a few snaps. And who was the other third rounder?
Wyatt Davis?
Wyatt Davis. And Wyatt Davis can't be found because he came to camp out of shape and he isn't smart enough or talented enough to get beyond whatever prejudice there is and physically dominate enough to take a spot away from Dakota Dozier or Oli Udo, then Mason Cole, now Oli Udo, and you tell me he was 2 years prior, his sophomore year, we're all saying, look at this All-American, he's going to be great. His junior year, we're thinking, fuck, this guy's a top 10 pick. Then he got hurt, right? And now he can't make it on an NFL team that's desperate for offensive linemen. What's his problem? I would love to know, me and a bunch of other people. That says something about that scouting department and the guy who runs it, who is Rick Spielman.
Was Wyatt Davis a team captain, David? I don't know.
Yeah, I do believe he was.
There we go. Well, then you have your answer. You have your answer. But we know offensive line play gets you fired up. But we are coming into the final part of the show. We've hinted at it. We've talked around it a little bit. But now, Jonathan, need to put you on the spot here. How do you see it going down? I think this game is actually going to go. Vikings, Packers, Sunday night. Do we have a chance? Are we going to sweep the division outside of Detroit? What are you thinking?
So it's very cold, right? Rodgers has a terrible toe injury. Maybe he walks into the stadium. He can't walk. Maybe he decides it's time for Jordan Love, and Jordan Love has a game like Mathew Stafford did last week. Dalvin Cook runs crazy. We win 35-17. I mean,
I like all
maybe,
of that.
but yeah, I don't know how realistic that is. My prediction, if I have to pick a score, I'm gonna go 27-16. Packers win and cover. So that would be my prediction. I think we're gonna have trouble scoring points without Thielen and in the cold. I think we can't score, and despite the cold, I think Rodgers still puts up enough on us for it to be an issue.
David, how are you feeling about the game?
We're going to lose.
Okay. That's pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward.
It'll be hopefully a one-score game. I want to see the Vikings beat the record for one-score games. Another notorious record.
Do you think the Packers cover in this game?
What's the line is? Let me bring that up.
Currently 6.5. 6.5.
Wrong chart. I even saved it. Where the hell did it go? Here we go. Green line. Boom. There it is. Presently 6.5, you said?
Mm-hmm. 6.5.
It's gone as much as 7. Do they cover? That's going to be interesting because it's going to be right around that one touchdown.
Ooh.
No, that's a good bet.
Oh,
Either way, that's a good bet. Right at that line. I think the Vikings may squeak in. So, but they're not going to win.
oh, here we go. Look at Mary coming through. There it is. Mary coming through. Optimistic. She said she was going to be positive on this show. Coming through all the way. Predicting the Vikings win. Dan predicting a Vikings win. Who else? Okay, I think that's it. Everyone else is
Hey,
going
now,
with the pack.
last week I said, watch this. Last week it was Sunday. After we lost to the Rams, right now, we've got to win out and get some help to get in the playoffs. Watch the Vikings sweep the division, except for against the winless Lions. That is how the Vikings are. They will do that. They will tie us back in. They will grab our heart just to yank it out come the following week and ruin, our draft position and everything else. So that can always happen too.
All right. Last thing before we get out of here, because CY's brought it up a couple times in the comments, and I feel like we got a little bit of time. Why not talk about it? We're all here. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on a 2 QB system? Something like the Saints were trying earlier in the season, where they had Jameis, your more traditional drop back QB, maybe Mond, your more athletic Taysom sort of QB. C-Wise has been throwing it out here as an idea, something the Vikings could go with, could try as they get into next season. Or hell, it's something maybe we could have tried this season with Kirk and Kellen. Who knows? What are your thoughts on the Vikings maybe just getting creative and saying, screw it, and trying to do something a little bit different to give themselves an advantage where they can?
Personally, I love it. So let's think about it here. If you're in the red zone, right, say inside the 5 yard line, the skill set needed to score points from the QB is much different than the skill set you want your typical QB to have, right? There's no deep throws when you're inside the 5 yard line, right? And even in other short yardage situations, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 4th and 2, 4th and 3, being an athletic QB, being fast is more valuable. Being decisive, being very accurate with close range receivers, being able to fit the ball in. Those are all the kinds of things that maybe a QB can make all the throws within 10 yards, 15 yards, and maybe they're really athletic, but they can't make the throws deeper, so then they're not even on an NFL roster, right? But they could have a place as a situational player. I think it would be really smart for more teams to try an experiment with a two-person or two QB system where one QB really tries to play in more short yardage situations than the other QB in more normal situations or longer passing downs. I think that would be very beneficial for the teams that would try it.
That'd be an
All
interesting
right.
experiment.
It would certainly be an interesting experiment. Billy Bats doesn't seem to think it'd be a funny experiment. I mean, he seems upset about it for some reason. Not sure what that's all about, Billy, but thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching. Hope that you had fun with the rest of the folks that are hanging out with us tonight. But hey, Dan made it. Vikings Jerome made it. Steve, Quang, Luis, Paul, everybody else. Thanks for coming on through. As always, it's a pleasure to come through, chop it up with all of y'all, have a drink or two, talk about our Vikings, and that's it. That's the show. Dave, tell them what's coming up for the rest of the week.
Well, we have tomorrow night, we have Viking Hot Takes with the great and wonderful Flip Mozzie and Eric Thompson with his dad jokes from Daily Norseman. And then Saturday, you have myself and fellow old blogger Darren Campbell getting together to preview the Sunday night game, which I recommend that you listen to on mute because it's going to be an absolute slurp fest for Aaron Rodgers. And then we start all over. And right after the game, we have, of course, Climbing the Pockets, the final score, which Jayson, myself, Matt, and I'm spacing on the regulars. Too much beer.
It's Flip. It's Flip.
Flip. Come at you and see how it goes. So hey, it could go either way. I'm just saying, It could go either way. I hope the Vikings win, because trust me, every time the Vikings beat the Packers, it warms my heart, and it makes that next week so much better. But we'll see. Doug is saying, got to unload these high pricers. Yeah, Doug, that makes sense. So, but that's it for the end of the week. Make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We want to thank everybody that has. We went over to 1,000 subscribers this week. That is a milestone. It opened up a couple of things on Facebook for us, or not Facebook, YouTube. You'll see our new communities tab where we can talk. You'll see me post some of my producer Dave's artwork on occasion. I did the huddle artwork on Tuesday, especially since we didn't have a show. And it's a place for us to interact. So I'll be checking it daily. I know Jason checks it daily. And we'll be here. And we've also been planning some stuff for the off season and upcoming in the new season I think you'll like. So that's on the way as well. Until then, what do we say,
Dan?
Jason?
Oh, we can't go yet. Dan asked a very important question. How often are we on? We are on about, 6 days out of the week?
We're scheduled for 6.
Sunday. Scheduled for 6. We try to do about 6. So Sunday after the game we'll be on. Monday we're on. Tuesday we're on. Wednesday obviously we're on. Vikings Hot Take on Thursday, and 2 old bloggers hit you up on Saturdays. So we try to do 6 in a week. And yeah, we will be there. Billy asked if we are upset. No, none of us are upset. We are all smiles, having a good time here.
Enjoy
and
your
Mary,
beverage.
that is a very great call out. Rest in peace to John Madden.
Yes.
He was the GOAT at what he did. His video game is why so many of us have better clock management than Mike Zimmer. So all love.
Yeah, but
to
there's
Madden.
some of us that remember him in the Super Bowl. It happened to be one we lost, but yes, I remember watching Ken Stabler, and yeah,
Sadness.
no, it is. He's a great man. There's no other man that I know of that exuded the love of football more, not only as a coach, but then as a broadcaster, and then bring it to the game to share it with youth everywhere, than John Madden. He's done more for football than most anybody in that Hall of Fame. And it's just, he's the ambassador of it. He loves to talk football, always has. And I hope the big man had a nice reunion with everybody else up there in heaven, and they had one hell of a party, because that happens.
Absolutely. That's well said. I think nothing else to say after that. Dave, play the music.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. SKOL, everybody.